So what's going on, guys? I'm Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another Zombies Q&A on the channel, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do with Zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. As always, if you go into enjoy today's video, you know what to do by now. Drop me a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content. But let's get into this. Here we go, and enjoy. So we've got a bunch of questions to get through today. The first one is from Edgar Rojo, or Rojo, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But you say, can you do an explanation on the Krasny Soldat in Cold War's Outbreak? I can, but it's not going to be very interesting since we don't really know too much about it. There aren't any documents, ciphers, intel that give us information on it, so all I can tell you is what we see in game. Obviously, going off its name and looks, it is very similar to the Panzer Soldat, which we do know quite a bit about, but the Krasny Soldat isn't quite the same. Whereas the Panzer was a German soldier inside of a mech suit, the Krasny Soldat is a Russian soldier inside of a mech suit. The Panzers were built by Group 935, the Krasny was built by Omega. It is a Russian suit, we can tell just by looking at it. There is the red star, and obviously Outbreak is the location where Omega was operating. But if you were hoping for a story, well, that's really it, and there wasn't really one for the original Panzer. It was a mech suit created by Group 935 to excavate Element 115 from the ground. When the zombie outbreak began, the soldier inside of the suit became infected. That's all the storyline is. So as for the Krasny Soldat, I'm guessing it's something similar, maybe used to excavate Ethereum from the Dark Ether. He has a cannon on one arm and a flamethrower on the other, and actually I would say it reminds me more of Nikolai's mech suit that we saw in Gorod rather than the Panzer. That was Russian as well. It's a lot bulkier than the Panzer Soldat as well, but yeah, that's literally everything we know about it. The next question of the day is from Demon Savage Leo, and you say, hey BOA, if the next DLC is Berlin and the boss is Hitler, and he is still conscious of himself and his army, doesn't that mean that the transit characters could still be alive and conscious as well? So I've already done a video on what I think of the transit characters, but there was something interesting that you said at the beginning of this question, and that was to do with Hitler. Now you may be thinking, Eli, what are you on about? Black Ops Cold War Zombies takes place during the Cold War in the 1980s, but we know in the first map, D Machine, the first part of that story, everything began in the 1940s, during the end of World War II. And it was in a spectral reflection we saw with Dr. Vogel, where he spoke about the Führer, who of course was Hitler, and what his plans with Ethereum and the undead were.
Ulrich Vogel, PhD, 22nd of August 1944. It took losing Normandy to finally get the Führer's attention, but now, at last, he wants to weaponize our findings here at End Station. It was an idea that occurred to me the moment I first conceived of the Wechsler. If we can restore the minds of our necrotized soldiers, even just to follow simple commands, we could unleash an undead army on both fronts. Just imagine each brave German who falls in battle rising back up to protect the fatherland. It gives me joy to picture the enemy running in terror from men who cannot die.
So, as you've just heard, during the 1940s, Dr. Vogel, who was the head of End Station, tells us that Hitler wanted to weaponize their findings. They wanted to restore the minds of necrotized soldiers so that they could follow basic commands, and then use that power to unleash an undead army on both fronts. Basically, for every German soldier that was killed in the war, they would rise up once again as a zombie and continue to attack the enemy. That was Hitler's plan, but that was also during the end of the war. Of course, we know the Germans lost and the war came to an end, but the Germans may have in fact succeeded at their secret plan. There is an audio log you can find in Cold War as a part of Season 2. It is from a person named Fedorov who was trapped within the Dark Ether. He was sent in there by the Omega Group to mine Ethereum, and while in the Dark Ether, he witnessed something unspeakable. He saw a large group of the infected all grouped together. This was strange because usually they'd just be roaming around on their own, but he noticed a massive group of zombies, hundreds of them, all huddled together, and what was even stranger was what they were wearing.
Fedorov, Omega Group. We have been reassigned from Ethereum mining duties. That task now falls to vermin, enemies of the state. But now they expect us to map the Dark Ether. That is what Pack calls this place. I would like to see him try to survey this madness. I have seen things out here. Unspeakable things. And today, Bozhe moi. Usually, large groups of the infected are chaotic, mindless mobs, but today, I found hundreds of them strangely grouped. On their clothing, were they uniforms? I dared not get too close, but they looked like... No. No, that cannot be right. It surely cannot be. This place, it plays tricks on you. I just need to get some sleep.
Even though Fedorov doesn't exactly say it in this radio, the way he's so worried about what uniforms these zombies are wearing, how he says, no, that can't be right. Surely it can't be. The only thing that would make sense, because remember, this radio is from the 1980s, is Fedorov has seen zombies wearing German army uniform from the 1940s. You can imagine him seeing them still existing in the 1980s, 40 years after the war ended. He's going to be surprised. Was this Hitler's plan all along? As we heard Dr. Vogel say in Die Maschine, the Führer's plan was to create an undead army. We thought that never came into fruition, but secretly, maybe it did. What if, before the war ended, he sent all of the remaining Germans into the Dark Ether, where they would gather, hold up together, and one day, when there's enough of them, hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions, they will escape the Dark Ether and cause World War III. And possibly, this is a big if, but maybe Hitler never died. Or if he did, he became a zombie and is in the Dark Ether as well. Along with his undead army, could he return? As a boss, maybe, maybe not. But who knows? The next question of the day from Chris says, why is there a giant robot on the moon loading screen? Okay, so I know exactly what you're on about. Now and again, as with plenty of questions, I see this one pop up. I know the reason why. Quite a few years ago at one point, there were several videos that popped up on YouTube saying that the giant robots from Origins were built on Moon. I believe the main reason why people said this is if you look at the moon loading screen, you can see a giant shadow is cast over it. You would think there is only one thing big enough to cast a shadow like this, the 1,000 foot tall robots on Origins, but if you just take a closer look at it, it's pretty easy to tell that this is Samantha. It is a girl holding her teddy bear, the iconic pose that we've seen Samantha in many times. Why she's so big, I guess, is a bit of a mystery. I suppose that's not something to look into. I can see why a lot of people thought that maybe this was the giant robots. They are really the only things big enough to cast a shadow like this. But what gives us even more proof that this isn't one of them is if we look at the alternate moon loading screen, we can see down the bottom right we have that same shadow of Samantha and her teddy bear. This time the shadow isn't cast over the moon. Griffin Station also doesn't exist on this one, and the astronauts are facing us. To be honest, we still don't fully 100% understand what this means. Why is Griffin Station gone? For Samantha's shadow, well, we know she's inside of the MPDO moon, so that could be what that's representing, but there are still a lot of mysteries. If you're asking, okay then, well, where were the robots built? The answer to that would be Origins. A lot of people also think they were built on the map The Giant, for two reasons. One, the obvious one, the map's called The Giant, that's Der Riese translated from German to English, but also, on the map itself, we can see a giant robot being constructed in the background. But I believe the reason for that being there was due to the fracturing of the universe. We know a lot of things in BO3 were in places where they weren't supposed to be. Because of temporal distortions, things got teleported from one dimension to another, which is why we see the old western town in Buried, or the Mob of the Dead plane on the roof of the Giant. It's also why we see the Origins robots there, where in reality, they were built in Origins. So yeah, hopefully that clears that up. I guess by now it's an old theory, but some people still believe it. And that's what Zombies has always been. It's been built off theories. So guys, there we go, that is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating, make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel, and as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, goodbye.